Isn't that beautiful? Got a new microphone for my camera. It's a Rode VideoMicro, which I love, by the way. And I'm really happy overall with the microphone. However, I find two things with it. One is that it is a little bit too crispy. And second, I find it lacking a little bit of bass. Can I make this microphone sound like the Shure SM7B? And the answer is yes. Using an image, the frequency response image that you get on the datasheet of the microphone, in order to trace an EQ curve. And it works. If I can use that curve, can I match two different curves? And yes, you can. Please join me if you want me to show you how to match two microphone frequency response curves using equalization. Let's do it. Okay, so we're back in the studio, and the first thing that we're going to do is go into Google and search for the datasheet of the different microphones. In order to do that, we just go into a browser and we're going to type the name of the microphone. For example, in this case, Shure SM7B datasheet. Normally the first result works, and as you can see here at the bottom, you can see the frequency response image, which is what we want. Then we're gonna do the same for the second microphone. So for that, we're gonna type Rode VideoMicro datasheet, and same thing. Well, in this case, it's taking us to the official Rode website. So we'll go there, we scroll down, and around here at the bottom where the support files, we've got the VideoMicro datasheet. We click on it and it gives us the access to the PDF, and down below we've got as well the frequency response image. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is open any audio editor or any other application where you can generate white noise. In my case, I'm going to be using Shure SM7B, so I'm going to create a new file, 48 kilohertz, 24-bit, and now we're going to press Insert, Synthesis, Simple. Here we've got a drop-down, waveform shape, and between all of these different options, I'm going to pick up white noise and 60 seconds. After generating the white noise, we're going to save this file. Now we close and we're gonna go back into Ableton. Okay, so this is the project that I've already done. I'm going to repeat the process so you know what I've been doing. But basically the first thing that I've done is create an audio track, which I'm going to name White Noise Shure SM7B. I'm gonna create another channel, White Noise Rode VideoMicro. Now we're going to import in here our white noise sample. Another thing that I'm going to do, which is going to make the things much easier, is group these two channels, and I am going to call them EQ matching. The next thing that we're going to do, this is very important. We're going to load an instance of the EQ we want to use. In my case, I'm going to be using the Pro Q3 by FabFilter, but any other equalizer would work as long as it's got plenty of bands to choose from. Adjust the size of the interface. In my case, I've selected extra large. As you can see in here, the equalizer have different resolutions dB wise. In this case, it's showing us from 0 to +12 and -12. That you want to choose the ±30 scale. I'm going to do a screen capture. Now I'm going to go into Photo, Control N, enter Control V, and I've got here my screen capture. Now I'm going to select around the window of FabFilter, and I'm going to do image crop. Just for the sake of being organized, I'm going to start renaming the layers. This is going to be Pro Q3. we're going to import our PDF datasheets from the different microphones. So first with the Shure SM7B, I'm not sure if I'm saying Shure correctly, but whatever. In resolution, just in order to be able to zoom in enough, I'm going to select 750 pixels, enter, and this is the datasheet. It's transparent, so just for you to be able to see it properly, I'm going to add a white background. And as we can see, this is the part that we want. So again, I'm going to select around this scale, and again I'm going to do image crop, and I'm going to do the same thing for the Rode VideoMicro. I'm going to add a layer in white behind just so we can see this properly. And same process, we're going to make a square around the frequency response chart, image crop, and now we've got our two images. As you can see, they've got different aspect ratios, but that's not a problem. So now what we're going to do is drag and drop these curves on top of the equalizer screenshot. We can close these two windows now, we don't need them. So now, well, the first thing that I'm going to do is name the two layers. So this layer is the VideoMicro, and this other layer is the Shure SM7B. Now I'm going to make this a little bit easier to see by changing the color. So I'm going to make it red, and I'm going to basically copy these settings, copy layer style and paste layer style on the Rode channel. Basically what we're trying to do is increase the contrast and just make it on a color that is easier to see. Both of our microphones have a scale that go between +20 and -30 in this case. On the Shure we've got +/-20, and the idea is that we're gonna make that match with this scale. So let's open first the Shure SM7B. Roughly going to transform this by pressing Ctrl+T. And as you can see, this is the frequency range. This is 20 Hz and this is 20 kHz. So we're gonna match those, the 20 kHz, with the 20 kHz of the FAB filter. We're gonna match as well the 0 line. +/-20, so our idea here is first I'm going to make sure that this is aligned, the 20 kHz line is matching both on the datasheet frequency response and the equalizer, and same with 20 Hz. So here we've got 20 Hz and 20 kHz, and now I'm going to modify this until I make it match with the -20. I think somewhere around there is good enough. And the same thing with the top. That's good enough. Now we've got +20 matching +20 on FAB filter, -20 matching the -20, 20 kHz is aligned to 20 kHz, 20 Hz is aligned with 20 Hz. Now we're going to repeat the process with the other curve from the Rode VideoMicro. So again, now we've got our Rode VideoMicro, the SM7B, correctly aligned. And now what we're going to do is the following. We're going to mute, deactivate the other two layers. I'm going to create a layer just to make things easier in white, okay? And now I'm going to export this file, well, save as JPEG, and we're going to save it again as well into our EQ matching project. Now that we've got this done, we can minimize or get rid of that. Now the next part is up to your choice. You might have already an image editor that allows you to see transparency, but I've downloaded this free program, free software, which is called Nomax Image Launch, and I will put a link in the description. But basically this is just a normal image editor, image viewer, but it's got a few really cool settings. One of the things that you can do is when you press View, there's a setting here that is change opacity. So when we change opacity, I'm gonna put it at 18%. As you can see, the image opacity has been turned down so we can see through. The next thing as well that is really cool is that you can lock the window so you cannot click on it. The first step, once we open the image in this Nomad image editor, is we're going to click on View, Show 100%. This is crucial. Show 100% will allow us to set this image right on top of FabFilter Pro Q3 and have the exact settings that we had before. Now we're going to open Ableton and I'm going to place the image on top of the equalizer, View, Change Opacity. I'm going to put the opacity at 18%. And now I can move freely this image so it fits in +20, -20, okay? As you can see, now we've got perfectly aligned the image we've created with the frequency response of the microphone on top of the EQ. And now, View, Lock Window. So now as you can see, I cannot move it anymore, I cannot select it, and also it's showing me the bands of FabFilter. Now I'm going to choose this as a low pass, and the idea is basically to trace the image. As you can see, I'm roughly going to do this because I've already done it. And now by changing the Q, we can more or less match the curve. You can see in here that there are several different lines. The dash line in here is the low cut that you can set on the SM7B. This is a high boost option that also has. The red straight line is the normal frequency response of the microphone. But basically you're just gonna be fiddling around with these curves, with these different EQ bands in order to try and match the curve as good as possible. I know many of you would say, I mean, no matter how much you clone the frequency response of the microphone, it's not going to sound the same. And that's true, because I mean, there are physical differences between the microphones that are not going to be possible to replicate just using EQ matching. However, the thing that we're trying to do in here is not just match the exact sound, but match the frequency response a little bit. So if the microphone is a little bit brighter or it's got more bass, we're gonna try to match those qualities. We're gonna try to make it a little bit bassier, we're gonna try to make it a little bit less harsh, but obviously the sensitivity or the character that the microphone has due to the manufacturing, the capsule and the different elements inside are not going to be possible to be replicated, but this gets us close enough. Okay, so you can see where I'm going. You keep adding bands. We keep adjusting the Q of the different bands until well, you get the idea, no? And now we save this, save as, and you save your own presets. Once you've done that, we can close this screen and we would do the same with the VideoMicro. Open with Nomax Image Launch, View, Show 100%, View, Opacity, 18%. Go into Ableton, we will go into our second channel here, into our white noise of the Rode VideoMicro, and open another instance of ProQ. And now we will align, and we need to choose the ±30 scale. Now we make this match again in +20, -30 and 20 Hz to 20 kHz. There we go. I am going to lock the window, go into Ableton, and same process. Okay, so as you can see, this was a little bit more easy than the SM7B. That's good enough. So now what we would do is close the image, save a preset with the name VideoMicro EQ Curve. I'm going to change zero latency to natural phase. And now is where the fun begins. There are different options to do EQ matching. So choose whatever equalizer you prefer. In my case, I'm going to use isotope ozone. I'm going to load that in the group channel or the send channel, whatever your software allows you. Okay, so what we're going to do in here now is we're going to capture the frequency response of one of the microphones, play white noise through the EQ curve that we just did and capture that profile. And then we're going to do the same with the second one, so we can apply one curve to the next one. So in this case, I'm going to mute the Rode VideoMicro. I'm just going to leave on the SM7B and we're going to press play. So we're gonna press capture and we're gonna leave it there for a few seconds. I recommend you to leave it for a minute or so. Okay, that's good enough. So I'm gonna press stop and now we're going to mute the SM7B and we're going to unmute the Rode VideoMicro channel and we're going to do the same, play and capture the response. Leave it there for a minute. I think that's good enough and now I'm going to stop it. Okay, this is not critical because with the software then you can apply smoothing. It will smooth out all of those peaks and valleys. Moment of truth. I'm going to copy this channel, which it was an audio, random audio that I've had, and I'm going to paste it in the group, and I've already got looped. And also the microphone section. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put a heat, which is me talking. And even though it's not like perfect, the sound of this clip is going through the group that we made and basically is getting the correction applied. So I'm going to turn off correction and I'm going to be doing A/B for you to check the difference, the adjustment from one curve to the next one. I'm going to try different settings like from 0 or 30, 60 and 100, even though 100 is extreme. Okay, so this is the sound with nothing. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put a heat. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put a heat. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put a heat. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera, that was 30%. I'm gonna do a more drastic one at 60. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put a heat. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put a heat. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put a heat. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put a heat. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put a heat. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera. And now I'm gonna go for 100% for more dramatic effect. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put a heat. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put a heat. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put a heat. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put a heat. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put a heat. And also the microphone. Now I've put, what do you think? I think it's awesome. One of the cool things that you can do with isotope is with this ozone EQ matching, is let's say you don't want the bassiness, you only want to correct the highs. You can move this slider and just leave the high settings. Let's leave them from 3K onwards. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put a heat. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put a heat. And also the microphone. Now I've put, instead of being on top of... Same thing with the highs. We could just leave the bass adjustment and just remove the highs. Let's see how this sounds. And also the microphone. Now I've put it, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put it here. And also the microphone. Now I've put it, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put it here. And also the microphone. Now I've put it, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put it here. And also the microphone. Now I've put it, instead of... Pretty cool. 100 is a lot. Let's leave it at 50%. And also the microphone. Now I've put it, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put it here. And also the microphone. Now I've put it, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put it here. And also the microphone. Now I've put it, instead of being on top of the camera, I've put it here. And also the microphone. Now I've put it, instead of being... I'm not really sure if after YouTube compression this is going to be very noticeable, but I can definitely hear detail on the high end, a little bit less harsh, and the bass, the depth, the body of the voice, which I really like. All in all, I think the technique worked out pretty well. This is something I'm going to be using in the future for sure to match different microphones. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Obviously, this is not going to be perfect because, as I said before, the physical properties of different microphones are obviously going to imprint a character into the sound, the diameter of the capsule, the internal electronics, if it's got tube or not, preamp settings and all of those things. So it's not perfect, but for sure it's going to allow you to match a little bit of the crispiness and the body of the different microphones to make them less different. Hope you liked it. Hope to see you again in the next video. Stay safe and see you next time. Silence. Gretel! If you like the video and the content, if you like... Manly, stop, please, stop.